Joining us now on Zoom is retired Colonel Rich Outzen, a senior fellow at the Atlantic Council. I want to ask you how much of a threat you think Iraq poses to the state of Israel at this point.
Well, it's good to be with you. Iraq is certainly not an existential threat as a state for Israel. It doesn't have conventional military forces or rocket forces or anything like that capable of posing a serious threat to Israel. But the problem with Iraq is that it doesn't control its own territory. So Iran is able to pursue the same sort of strategy they've pursued through Lebanon and to some extent through Gaza, through proxies there. And they have been doing that. And they seem with this latest shipment of missiles to Iraq reportedly to be doubling down on that. Now, it's a sign of weakness. And that, as your previous speaker said, this is a clear indication that Iran's not in a position to fire from its own territory without expecting that it will pay a disproportionate price in return. So in a sense, it's a sign of desperation. It's certainly something that Israel's air defense forces and those of allied countries need to take seriously.
How can we expect the United States to get involved given its military presence within Iraq?
Well, this is an interesting conundrum because on the one hand, the United States, Washington recognizes that Iran has outsized influence in Baghdad, especially in certain of the ministries. And yet we're still competing for influence there, trying to make sure that we push them towards an Iraqi national and patriotic policy rather than one that is simply being a satrapy of the Iranians. So without putting massive pressure on Iraq, I think the United States is subtly indicating using some of its tools. For instance, the message was sent from Washington in the last 24 hours to Iran. If you attack Israel, we will not be able to restrain Israel from what it does next. And I think that will be heard in Baghdad as well. If there's attacks from Iraqi territory, just because we have troops in certain parts of Iraq does not mean that you will be shielded as the people firing the rockets in Iraq against Israeli reprisal.
Could the current trajectory of Israel-Iranian tensions make the United States reevaluate its negotiated pullout from Iraq?
Well, it sort of depends on the politics in Baghdad. I think right now it's been exaggerated the degree to which the United States is pulling out. It's certainly reducing forces, but there's a bit of a wink and a nod involved here. I think both the Iraqi government, Sudani certainly, and the Kurdistan regional government do not want the United States to fundamentally withdraw. They do want to see a lowered footprint and a continued downward trajectory in the number of troops there. I don't think that will change depending on what goes on here. The wild card here is if the governing coalition in Baghdad, which includes this uneasy sort of grouping of people who are pushing for a more independent line and those that are beholden to Tehran, if that breaks down and we see sort of more civil infighting or unrest within Iraq over this clearly dangerous situation they've been put in by the Iranians and the current government. As of right now, I don't think it's going to change America's current trajectory, though.
All right. I'd like to thank you so much for joining us in the studio from the United States. We're going to be turning